the mayoral candidates, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mayoral candidates, my question is about infrastructure. Unfortunately, infrastructure costs. In part of the preamble to question 1, and I'll quote, Council's annual accounts testify that it supports the islands by $10 more than it collected in rates each year. Nowhere, 10 million I said, did I? Oh, $10 would have been good. 10 million, okay. Nowhere in those accounts could I find such a comparison for the other 9 divisions. We are a city, okay? If we were to only spend what came in our division, then we would have a fractured city. It's not possible. Let me now go back. Between 1974 and 2008, rates from the RKLM Islands subsidised infrastructure works on the mainland. Let me give you an example, and I'm quoting from a newspaper article, August 1998. In the Council's fiscal year 98-99, the collection of rates on the 4 islands was 6.57 million. However, Council only budgeted capital works on the islands of 2 million. There's a difference there of 4.5 million, which I've got no problem with us subsidising part of the mainland at times. It's now time for us. My specific question is, past councils have treated Stradbroke Island, which has a population of only 2,106, this is ABS statistics, not mine, as the jewel island in the city's crown by providing it with copious amount of infrastructure over the years. The RKLM Islands, which has a population of 4,896 ABS, double that of Stradbroke Island, has for over 30 years been treated as the boil on Council's bum and been given limited infrastructure. What during your term as Mayor do you do to intend about this anomaly, and could you give specific examples? Thank you.
Thanks, Mike, and I agree because it's pretty much my response to the first question was we can't go segregating our communities into who raises what and who spends where, because we are one big community and we have to make sure we acknowledge that if we're divided then we're actually less prosperous. But just on the figures that you gave me, when you discussed the 1998-99 budget and said there was a figure of $6.57 million that was raised in revenue from rates on this island, is that correct, Mike?
That's according to the article, yes.
And you referred to capital expenditure of 2 million. When council budgets, we have 2 types of expenditure. One is operational and one is capital. And obviously capital deals with your infrastructure. One of the realities of living on an island, and you would know that because you live here, is that it's always more expensive to do anything on the island. The operational expenditure was probably made up, and I can't tell you because you haven't given me those figures, another portion of that $6.57 million. Which probably brings me to another point, which is that if you can actually have different programs where you can have people, and I think we probably all agree on this, self-sustaining employment, and I think Melvin might have mentioned the fact that we've got people coming in trucks and buses, we create employment in Ireland, that actually reduces that operational expenditure, Mike, which allows you, in fact, to spend more on capital. That's just that point of the question, and just correct me if I'm missing part of the question because there was multiple. Stradbroke Island. I'm going to use this as the example because, as I said earlier, what you need on the southern Macleay Island is a positive attitude, a great perception, so that you can encourage business investment on your island. With business investment comes contribution. And as you do that, you start to be able to deliver that infrastructure. We all heard about infrastructure fees. They apply to the islands as they do on the mainland. So that's point 1. And when you get that investment, then you start to change stuff to property values, etc., which allows you to invest back into the community and into infrastructure. You use Stradbroke Island, and it's a great example, as an example of having infrastructure. Can I say to you that a lot of the infrastructure on that island was delivered by the mining company, whatever it was in the last, we've had 3 different reiterations from the mining company council. Roads, sewage and dunnage, that was delivered by that industry on the island. Which is why I was gobsmacked when the state government ran roughshod over the creative legislation they would automatically short-track finalisation of mining, because those businesses contribute to the well-being of those communities. Not only do they provide jobs, they provide infrastructure. And as Melba said earlier, we have to make sure that every part of our community gets a fair share of infrastructure. It's difficult on the islands because it's more expensive and your operational costs are more expensive. We have to find that balance. But I agree, if we can find investment and we can deliver those things as part of the conditions of that investment, then everyone's going to be better off. Your rates aren't going to go up as much. You're going to get the infrastructure that you need. But we need to have people at the table and working in partnership. Because frankly, local government isn't what it used to be. We're going to have to get very, very creative. And we've got to build partnerships with other levels of government, in particular with business. Because as you know, we are very, very dependent on grants. And there's only so much that you can bear in rate increases. And I think we're at that point. So we have to find that balance. Did I miss any part of your question?
No.
Why did we do the separation of the dollars? Because you asked for it. How many times did you say, did we hear exactly, and we saw the heading, thank you, that Mark, I see your milking cow every time I drive out of Redland Bay. How many times did you claim that certain expenditures were there and that no one would give you the answer? That's why we report it separately, so you can see what is spent on the island. Let's just give you an example, and I'm happy for you to look at the projects, the capital projects that are listed here. $10 million is collected in this financial year, so you can take it back a little bit from the other years. Let me give you an idea of what's been spent on capital. 2007-8, 2.6 million, 8-9, 5.3, 9-10, 6.3, 10-11, 5.07, 11-12, 5.8, 12-13 anticipated 5.9. So 50% of what is collected is being put back onto the islands on infrastructure. What have we actually, and you can go through the list of projects here, and I'm not going to read them all. There's a whole heap of road upgrades that are listed. There are a whole heap of projects for both social infrastructure and road infrastructure, sport and recreation, community facilities. They're all listed here. You can actually have a look at them if you want to see what are some of the things and the roads that have been done. So there has been about 50% spent on infrastructure. The cost, as has been said, as Karen referred to, for operational projects on the island is very expensive. Every time a waste truck comes over, the price is incredibly expensive. We have to find smarter ways to do it so that we don't have those huge operational costs, because you have your capital budget and you have your operational budget, and it's the operational budget that is costly every time a community library comes over, a mobile library comes over. Every time anyone does that, the costs are high. Transport, having a cheaper transport option in terms of transit certainly will make a difference to that. It will reduce those costs. But unless we can also get some subsidy for the barge transport, it's not going to impact on our capital expenditure. It's not going to reduce that or our operation, because we're still going to be facing those fees. So that you ask for the delineation, we don't do it anywhere else. And we don't expect, and other divisions aren't spent, and we don't spend money on a divisional basis. But the money that's collected from the islands is spent on the islands because we are trying to catch up that backlog. How we do it is going to be incredibly difficult. Talk about infrastructure charges. There are very few opportunities on the islands for infrastructure charges. As you know, the islands are all subdivided. There are no subdivisions to take place. So, infrastructure charges occur when the developer first subdivided the island. There were no infrastructure charges collected. There was no infrastructure provided. A grid was put on the top of the islands and pressed down and said, this is what the land will be. There's not opportunity for major land development which will bring infrastructure charges. The only opportunity is for some industrial areas, and we don't want to have we don't want to have infrastructure charges. I would support in industrial areas having no infrastructure charges to encourage those businesses to come. So let's be realistic about the sources of revenue from the Southern Moreton Bay Islands. And infrastructure charges isn't one of them. And the state has capped infrastructure charges, so now, on major developments on the mainland, you know how much you contribute? You contribute to your rates up to 60%, because the developers have had the charges capped. But there's not the opportunity for infrastructure charging on these islands, because the subdivision occurred 40 years ago.